Hello, hello. Welcome. Hope you're really well. Say hello if you're watching it live. I'm taking a bit of a casual stance today and just sitting back on my couch while I go live and talk to you about natural capital. And so I scheduled this live because I thought it would be really great to cover this topic. It's becoming more and more important in the sustainability and the ESG space that ecosystems, biodiversity, natural capital ultimately is being considered in the way that businesses interact and use and rely on nature. And so for many years we've taken from nature as much as we've wanted. And, now I guess in the recent decades, we've got systems in place such as compliance and regulation that kind of tells us, well, if you're, releasing too much of this chemical into the river streams, then you're going to get this sort of regulatory slap on the wrist, whatever it might be, right? And I guess it's interesting to me because this idea actually comes down to kind of a way of thinking piece, which is that we've always felt that we have the right to take what we need to from nature, and we also have the right to then define what nature is worth to us. Now, that's where I wanted to kind of touch on this topic because I find it interesting. It is really a balance of starting to value nature for what it is, but also the struggle of saying, who are we to define what nature is worth to us? So it really is a complex topic. And I guess the important part here is to understand, what is natural capital and biodiversity? Where are these important areas that economic or natural capital services or ecosystem services can start to support us in addressing the natural capital issues of our economy? And also, what can businesses really start to do? So what is an ecosystem, right? An ecosystem is made up of people, planet, then nature, the environment. It's made up of so many things, lots of moving parts, and essentially it's where a system works together collectively to have all these individualized outcomes, but it all works in conjunction with each other. We feed into each other's needs and expectations, and really that's what an ecosystem kind of is in a very basic term. Biodiversity in particular is about the animals, about the plants, about the microbial matter, about everything to do with our environment, our natural environment. So when we start to realize that we have lent so heavily on this for so long, that all of our livelihoods, the way that we dress ourselves, the way we eat, the way we medicate ourselves, and take reap the benefits of healthcare, and so much more, it's all related to nature. The way we move ourselves around, transportation, everything, it all came from nature. At some point, it was part of nature and we derived it in a way that we could use. So when we're starting to realize now that biodiversity loss and this damage around natural ecosystems is enormous. It's probably, apparently one of the third largest issues around climate change. But, I mean, I really see it as probably one of the top issues. But we digress. That's not relevant. I guess the point here is that the impacts of biodiversity loss are huge. And so, the IPCC brings it up quite often in their reports, and talks about the fact that the biodiversity loss is also impacting climate change, and vice versa. Climate change is further impacting the biodiversity around us and therefore depleting this essentially diversity in our biological systems. And this diversity is imperative to have in our natural ecosystem, not so that we can have a range of different products to use and enjoy, but more importantly, so that the other parts that rely on this ecosystem around our natural environment can adapt and thrive and survive and move through kind of the natural evolution, of their existence. So biodiversity is really important, and we are now starting to see huge losses in this diversity as animals and plants start to go extinct or become endangered, and so much more. There's so much more happening to our biodiversity, and as a result, we're seeing the impacts in what we have access to, the types of products that we have access to, the types of raw materials we have access to make those products. So I guess it's important to understand how we can start to do things better as a business. And one of the things that I think is really important, sort of at the core of it, is to embed this value, this systems thinking, around value, the value that we place on the environment that we take from. So if your business makes dairy products, then you're very heavily involved in the farming and agricultural space. So there's obviously a piece of land that has been used for the purpose of feeding into your business. There are animals that are part of that system. There were animals prior to that using that particular geography or location because it was valuable in a particular resource, maybe, or it was the right spot for them um, to inhabit. And so, really understanding all of these moving parts and then placing a value on the natural capital that your business is leaning on can then start to change, sort of like with the carbon, the decarbonization process is we place value on carbon and we create a carbon economy. And then there starts to invite conversations, obviously legislation and policy changes that drive more and more action towards supporting, in this case, natural capital being preserved and natural capital being valued in the way that it needs to be. So it's a really interesting and it's a really complicated topic. And I guess, I wanted to just sort of touch on it very briefly because at the moment, I think that it is important to bring up this topic, and I'd like to kind of go into it in a little bit more detail in the coming sessions. But if you have thoughts or questions around what you would like to kind of understand around this piece, because it is really complex, it is quite big, let me know, drop me a note. But I just wanted to share some initial thoughts, talk about natural capital, and get the juices flowing, get you thinking about this space, and let me know, is your business looking at this? Is your business considering its impacts on the natural environment that it directly and indirectly interacts with? And if so, what are they doing? Because it's so wonderful as well to hear what businesses are starting to do now in this space, because this is it's definitely an emerging space, and it's certainly exciting to see it evolve. So I'd love to hear from you, your business, and what you're doing. And really want to thank you for your time today. And we will be having another session next week. So if you have any ideas on topics, let me know. But otherwise, take care of yourselves and bye for now.